because it does not suit their propaganda or because they are too scared to speak truth to power.
The stress of our world can take a toll on our physical and emotional health. Here, in New York's Catskill Mountains, lies a luxurious place of healing called WION Wellness Center. The WION Wellness Center provides 500,000 square feet of natural methods to manage diabetes, hypertension, chronic pain, obesity, depression, anxiety, and other conditions. We use the traditions of centuries-old natural science from India, yoga, Ayurveda, acupuncture, and naturopathy in personalized programs that help you take charge of your own health. A minimum 5-day stay is recommended for best results. Book now at yo1.com.
Broadcast Bulletin.
The top stories for today are: Indian High Commission in London vandalised after several Khalistani supporters hold protests outside the building. Former UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson will be submitting evidence of his innocence as MPs interrogate him about the partygate scandal. China's President Xi Jinping on a 3-day visit to Moscow. Can China broker peace between Russia and Ukraine?
Tune in to these times to WION World as One. Hello and welcome to WION. I'm Katie, broadcasting live from London this hour. Here are your headlines. China slams the International Criminal Court, saying it should double standards and respects of the immunity of states after The Hague issued an arrest warrant against Russian President Vladimir Putin. Japanese Prime Minister meets Indian PM Modi. Both nations in a joint statement call for fostering peace, prosperity and stability in the Indo-Pacific region in a veiled reference to China's growing aggression in the region. Meanwhile, China's President Xi Jinping heads to Russia, a trip Beijing has touted as a visit for peace as it seeks to play mediator in Vladimir Putin's war in Ukraine. Kenyan police reportedly launched tear gas on protesters as Kenyans gather in the capital, Nairobi, for a day of action against the cost of living crises. Danny Lee wins the Live Golf Tucson Invitational with a 25-foot birdie in a four-way playoff. This is his first victory in almost 8 years and takes home the top prize of $4 million. Hello there. We start with the UK, our top story today. The former Prime Minister of the country, Boris Johnson, is set to submit a collection of documents as evidence before he faces MPs over whether he lied to the Parliament about the partygate scandal. Well, according to his spokesperson, the Privilege Committee will try to defame Johnson's political position, and the evidence is likely to show that he did not knowingly mislead the Parliament. Well, the committee is reviewing 4 instances when the then Prime Minister Boris Johnson allegedly misled the MPs with his assurances that lockdown regulations were followed. Well, according to reports, Johnson will release messages that will show how some senior figures at Downing Street believed that the gatherings were protected by the workplace exemption in the lockdown rules. Well, the investigation panel will be chaired by the Labour Party member Harriet Harman. The panel will decide whether Johnson is guilty of contempt of Parliament and will recommend any penalty applicable. Well, the Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, the now Prime Minister, has said that he will not seek to influence the MPs on the panel. Many Johnson supporters have raised their concerns over the party investigation done by the former civil servant Sue Gray, as earlier reports suggested that she is going to join the Labour Party Sir Keir Starmer's office. However, the committee has long denied that its inquiry is based on the Gray report. Scores of Khalistani supporters vandalised the Indian High Commission in London on Sunday. Well, this is after the Indian government issued an arrest warrant against Amritkar Singh. Now, he is a radical preacher from India's Punjab state who has been accused of attempting to destabilise the state of Punjab. As per the official sources, Singh has maintained close links with Pakistani intelligence agency, the ISI, and terrorist groups based abroad. A major police crackdown is underway in India's Punjab. Singh, who is now on the run, has been accused of indoctrinating and attracting Sikh youth into a unit called the Waris Punjab D, or literally Inheritors of Punjab. Well, in the latest now, a man has been arrested on suspicion of violent disorder and a police investigation has also been launched. Meanwhile, the Indian government has summoned the most senior UK diplomat in New Delhi and lodged a strong protest as well. In a sharply worded statement, the ministry has condemned an explanation for the absence of security at the High Commission premises and further said that the UK government's indifference to the Indian diplomats and personnel were unacceptable. Well, the Indian government has further urged the UK government to take immediate steps to identify, arrest and prosecute each one of those involved in Sunday's incident. Meanwhile, taking to Twitter, the British High Commissioner to India, Alex Ellis, said that he condemns the disgraceful acts against the people and the premises as well of the High Commission of India in London. Echoing similar concerns, the Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, also tweeted condemning the violent disorder and the vandalism that took place at the Indian High Commission here. Khan further said that there is no place for this kind of behaviour and an investigation into this has now been launched. Well, this is not the first time that the Indian High Commission in London was vandalised. In 2019, the members of the Pakistani diaspora broke the window pane of the High Commission. Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida met the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi in New Delhi today. In a joint statement, both nations call for a fostering peace, prosperity and stability in the Indo-Pacific region, while a veiled reference to the China growing aggression in the region. Well, the meeting is part of the Kishida two-day visit to New Delhi. During the meeting with his Indian counterpart, he was briefed about India's priority as the chair of the G20.
इस साल भारत G20 की अध्यक्षता कर रहा है और जापान G7 की, और इसलिए अपनी अपनी प्राथमिकताओं और हितों पर साथ मिलकर काम करने का यह उत्तम अवसर है। आज मैंने प्रधानमंत्री किशिदा को भारत की G20 अध्यक्षता की प्राथमिकताओं के बारे में विस्तार से बताया। हमारी G20 अध्यक्षता का एक महत्वपूर्ण स्तंभ ग्लोबल साउथ की प्राथमिकताओं को आवाज देना है। वसुधैव कुटुंबकम को मानने वाली संस्कृति सभी को साथ लेकर चलने में विश्वास रखती है।
Well, the two also discussed regional and global issues of mutual interest as the war in Ukraine continues to divide the world, and many countries are now growing wary of countries with expansionist outlook now, including China's growing influence in the Indo-Pacific. Well, Kishida also invited Prime Minister Modi to attend the G7 meeting in Hiroshima, which he has accepted. Prior to this, the Japanese Prime Minister paid tribute to Indian freedom fighter Gandhi at his memorial. Well, the Japanese Prime Minister says he will be unveiling his plan for a free and open Indo-Pacific region on Indian soil. India and Japan are close strategic partners, as they both see China's growing influence in the region as predatory in nature, while India has skirmishes with the Chinese on its Himalayan border. Japan has been in a tight contest with China in the South Sea region. Well, for more, our political diplomat correspondent Siddhant Sybil sends us this report from New Delhi.
Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi and the Japanese Prime Minister Kishida held talks here in Delhi with focus on the G7 summit. The Japanese Prime Minister extending invite from the G7 summit to the Indian Prime Minister, and this is for the fifth consecutive time that India has been invited for the G7 summit since 2019, when French were the first to invite the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi. The focus, of course, was on Indo-Pacific, free and open Indo-Pacific. That, of course, is something that China is closely watching. Indo-Pacific is the region that has one of the largest economies in the world. A substantial portion of global trade passes through it, and the global population, a large proportion of the global population lives in the region, and the region has seen increased geopolitical contestations as well. But essentially, focus, of course, has been how Japan can help in India's development priority, especially in the development of the bullet train and also connectivity in India's northeast. With video journalist Chandrasekhar Siddhant for WION in New Delhi.
China's President Xi Jinping will arrive in Moscow today for his three-day visit. He's set to hold talks with Russian President Vladimir Putin. Well, reports say that Beijing is attempting to broker peace and put an end to the war in Ukraine. Well, the trip, it comes just 3 days after the International Criminal Court issued an arrest warrant for Vladimir Putin over alleged war crimes in Ukraine, including the deportation of Ukrainian children to Russia. The Chinese president will be the first person to meet Putin since the arrest warrant was issued. Well, neither Moscow nor Beijing are members of the ICC.
Well, it'll be, I would say, a serious reputational blow to President Xi, obviously meeting with someone who is now a pariah, effectively a criminal in the eyes of the civilized world. And of course, China still depends on its commercial relations with the West, especially Western Europe, where the court is located. But on the other hand, Xi is an ideological leader. And I suspect that in this case, the ideological affiliations and the alignments of his interests with those of Putin, that is distracting the West and keeping the West involved in a theater that's away from Taiwan, away from East Asia, might actually play better for.
Well, ahead of Xi Jinping's visit, John Kirby, the White House National Security Council spokesperson, he issued a statement. He accuses China and Russia of chafing against the international rules-based order that the US and its allies had set up after the end of the Second World War.
If, coming out of this meeting, there's some sort of call for a ceasefire, well, that's just going to be unacceptable, because all that's going to do, Mike, is ratify Russia's conquest to date. All that's going to do is give Mr. Putin more time to refit, retrain, reman, and try to plan for renewed offensives at a time of his choosing. We hope, and we've said this before, that President Xi will call and talk to President Zelensky, because we believe the Chinese need to get the Ukrainian perspective.
China is trying to achieve several different things with this trip, and it will be a tough balance. They do want to affirm the strategic partnership with the Russian Federation to show that America's attempts to split the relationship and make the relationship costly for China will not work. They want to show the developing world that they can play a constructive role. They want to avoid economic and reputational costs in Europe, so I think that they will be careful about how far they go in terms of signaling new support for Russia so that they're not seen as an enabler.
Well, the two leaders are set to have lunch together on Monday and have informal talks. The Kremlin had continued, or confirmed, I should say, that official dialogue between the presidents and officials of both countries will take place on Tuesday. The Kremlin spokesperson further confirmed that statements will also be given to the media after the meeting. Well, Xi Jinping, before leaving for Russia on his three-day visit, said there is a clear historical logic and strong internal driving force for growing China-Russia relations. He further said that in the past 10 years, Russia and China had come a long way, a wide-ranging cooperation, and made significant strides into the new era, he added. Referring to the Ukraine crisis, Xi Jinping said that China has long upheld an objective and impartial position based on the merits of the issue and actively promoted peace talks. Well, Russian President Vladimir Putin said that Russia is grateful for China's balanced line in connection with the events taking place in Ukraine, for understanding their background and true causes. He further said that Russia welcomed China's willingness to play a constructive role in resolving the crisis. Well, last month, China published a 12-point plan for a political resolution of the Ukraine crisis. Last week, a senior Chinese diplomat also called for negotiations while talking to Ukraine's foreign minister, that was. Well, Xi Jinping is expected to be a crucial mediator in the invasion of Ukraine. This is the first visit by the Chinese president since the invasion began in February 2022. Well, incidentally, this is also Xi Jinping's first foreign visit since he was handed an unprecedented third term as president of China. Well, Beijing has emphasized its concerns over the relentless year-long conflict between Russia and Ukraine. However, there is no confirmation yet on whether the Chinese president will hold talks with the Ukrainian president. Thousands of Israelis are up in arms against the government's plans to give lawmakers more control of the judicial system. Well, President Isaac Herzog's alternative changes have been rejected by the Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu. The president has warned that Israel is at a turning point now and the country may witness a civil war. Well, it looks like his call is turning out to be true as settlers are attacking the demonstrators. Well, protesters across Israel are reporting that men with hammers and people throwing firecrackers at them. Many demonstrators also reporting a number of attacks by taxi drivers. Well, the Israeli government says the reforms are crucial. The government has been citing an imbalance, and this has given judges too much power, they say, over elected representatives. Critics, notably on the right, though, have argued that Israel's top court judges have exceeded their authority. Well, the Netanyahu government wants to implement an override clause. It would allow the parliament to overrule some Supreme Court decisions with the support of 61 lawmakers in the 120-member parliament. The government sees it as a refusal by leftist opponents to accept the result of last November's election. The protesters say the future of Israeli democracy is at stake, or if the government succeeds in pushing through the plans they say. Well, we're going to get some more details on this now from someone in the region. It's our correspondent now joining us. I think we have a live now, which is fantastic. Hello to you. Great to see you. Thank you for your time today. Can the government's partial delay of the judicial reform bills be seen as a victory, do you think, for the protesters?
Right. Hello. Yes. So this is the first moderation of the coalition's judicial reform proposals, and they are being seen to have come about as a result of the protests. Now, we've seen 11 weeks of protests now with hundreds of thousands of people taking to the streets, including 3 days of disruption in 150 locations, including the one I'm standing in right now. Now, the coalition has postponed all the bills except one to mid-April, so that's a 1-month break, and they've called on the opposition to negotiate during this time. Remember, the opposition had said that they would be willing to talk, but not while the legislation was progressing. So right now, just one of the bills, that's the judicial appointments bill, is still in progress, but that's been amended by the chair of the Parliamentary Justice Committee, Simcha Rothman. Now, the original bill had effectively meant that all judicial appointments would be under political control, but under the new proposals, a coalition would have control of the first 2 appointments to the Supreme Court during its government, and after that they would need to seek broader support, so consensus candidates. Now, Yair Lapid, the head of the opposition, has already taken to Twitter and rejected this new proposal. We've not yet heard from Benny Gantz, who's another leading voice in the opposition. So it's too early to call if this is a victory, but the amendment and the delay in most of the bills are likely to be seen as positive signs by the protesters that the protests are having an impact.
Okay, so Jodie, what's likely to happen next, do you think? You say the protesters are likely to have an impact here.
Yes, so I think that the delay and the amendments are definitely going to be seen as signs that the protests are having an impact. We know that the protests have involved leading voices in the worlds of economics, business and security. And on Sunday, hundreds of army reservists didn't show up and report for duty. Now, they are expected to show up for any operations, but are reportedly missing some training. And some of Israel's allies, too, are calling on the coalition to slow down the legislation. For example, Prime Minister Netanyahu spoke on the phone with President Biden yesterday. Netanyahu said that Israel will remain a strong and vibrant democracy, and President Biden urged Netanyahu to secure the broadest possible support for the changes. Now, I've been reporting from the protests and spoken to many people on the ground. The message here appears to be that if a compromise can't be found, then they're certainly going to increase civil disobedience. So as well as the army reservists, they're also pointing specifically to the startup sector, which accounts for 25% of Israel's income tax revenue. So a lot will depend on if negotiations take place over the next month, whether or not we'll see further disruption. But meanwhile, we know that a day of disruption has already been scheduled for this Thursday.
Okay, all eyes on this Thursday then. Jodie Cohen, thank you so much, reporting from Israel for us, talking to the protesters. Right, we're going to shift our tracks to football now because Barcelona took a major step towards winning their first La Liga crown since 2019 by moving 12 points clear at the top of the table. The Catalan Giants, they came from behind to snatch a gasp, 2-1 win over rivals Real Madrid in the Clásico. Well, Barcelona had defeated Los Blancos 3 weeks ago in the first leg of the Copa del Rey semi-finals, and they knew a win at the Nou Camp would deal a big blow to Madrid's hope of retaining their title. The hosts, they dominated from kick-off but conceded against the run of play in the 9th minute when Vinicius Junior's cross was headed into his own net by Barcelona defender Ronald Araujo. Well, this was the first goal that the host had conceded in open play at home this season. The Catalan Giants, they continue to pile on the pressure and deservedly equalled just before half-time in a composed finish by Sergio Roberto. Both sides had chances after the restart, with Madrid needing the 3 points more badly than their rivals. Los Blancos poured 4 men forward in the search of a title race, altering goal, and they thought that they had got away with it. Just 10 minutes remaining on the clock, but Marco Asensio's strike was chalked off by VAR offside. Offside. Barcelona rubbed it in when Ivorian midfielder Frank Kessie scored a late winner in the stoppage time to claim all 3 points. Xavi Hernandez's side are now on 68 points from 26 games and within touching distance of their first title in the post-Lionel Messi era.
He's not done yet, but very close. Well, my thanks to Xavi Ferrer.
That is all from me today. Thank you so much indeed for watching, and stay with WION. More international news coming up for you just next.
Gravitas tells you stories which others won't. And tonight we will tell you about this new strategic map that is being drawn. They say your enemy's enemy is your friend. Is that the foundation of the new defense bridge between India and America? This is